Welcome, everyone, to another fantastic episode of Double Book. Tonight, my guest is Rosaire Bushey, a fantasy author, an editor, and the co-host of the podcast Bald and Balding. He is the creative mind behind Sigil of Enderune, a story that blends prophecy, war scars, and a brilliant magic system built on ink, quills, and the written word. After 25 years as a military journalist, Roe brings a unique perspective on conflict, loyalty, and the human resilience in his stories, themes, and tones. Today, we're going to dive into his inspirations, his process, and the world he's crafted in Sigil of Enderune, and maybe get a hint on what's coming next. Please welcome the legend himself, Rosaire Bushey. How's it going, Ro?
I'm just writing down all the stuff you were saying. I'm going to use it again one day. That was. I hope that check clears, man. Thank you.
I will look forward to my $1.25 later on for that introduction.
That's $1.50 quarterstaff right there. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, Ro. I've been looking forward to this conversation. To be honest, before we get started and let you go through and talk a little bit about your book, I really enjoyed it, and I really do appreciate you sending me a copy to go through and read in advance. Right. It was a lot of fun. We'll get into it more on the book discussion, but the magic system, the world itself, was so much fun, and it felt so lived in. And I'm really excited to pick your brain a little bit on some of those.
Just don't do it too hard. We'll be fine.
So for those in the chat that aren't familiar with you and your work, do you want to go through and give just a quick elevator pitch on the Sigil of Enderune?
Sigil of Enderune is basically, people have already told me I'm a little confused to who the main character is. The main character is actually a young boy named Finn. When the story really gets going properly, he's probably a young adult, 20 years old, who is, I guess, kind of a chosen one, right? But there's no reason for anyone to think he's a chosen one up until that point where he is. So it's one of those stories. It's kind of finding your way around this new world with a different kind of magic system, hopefully, that I haven't seen too often. And his relationship with his mentor, who has his own kind of backstory, and his new group of friends who, we'll see again in a couple of years, probably.
Love it.
So that's like the world's worst elevator pitch. I know, but
no, it's good.
It's good. We'll smooth it out as time goes by.
How's it going, Tim? Tim, I just want to mention, you cheated on who's going to talk about dinosaurs first. Just throwing it out there. Of you saying it before the chat was kind of cheating, but I got you, buddy. We'll figure out a way to add T-Rexes into the conversation. And this interaction doesn't count. I'll bring it up later on as well.
I saw an article today that they found a dinosaur that had like a crocodile bone in its mouth, right? And the kind of picture they used of said dinosaur, it actually had long enough arms to be useful, right? I mean, the arms actually stuck out far enough in front of it where it could actually grab things. So, I mean, that's kind of, that'd be neat.
That is pretty cool. That's pretty cool. You did say inorganically. You did say you'll just bring it up. I got you, Tim. I got you. And then we do have a legend on, the great Mike Mullman. How's it going, Mike? How's it going, buddy? Appreciate you being here.
What's this about? Can we all agree to avoid Vermont, Mike? What the hell's up with that?
I don't know. They were talking about all kind of stuff. I don't know what's wrong with Vermont. I think Vermont's a nice place,
It is. There's nothing wrong with it at all. He's just jealous he's from Kentucky.
Oh my goodness. And then we have the great Trinity on. How's it going, Trinity? And I got a new chat came in, so I missed it. So there we go. Hey, Trinity, how's it going? I had another one getting ready to click, but this is the one that I selected. Oh, there we go. I didn't get it either. I'm not sure what's in Vermont.
Gun-toting hippies, mostly.
A bunch of fun people. That's what it sounds like.
It's a very interesting kind of juxtaposition of people. Absolutely. It's a good place.
Fun, hippie, bunch of gun-toting hippies. Love it. So, Ro, before we jump into your story, I want to get a little bit of inside baseball with you. When did you first realize storytelling was something you wanted to pursue seriously? Was it always fantasy from the start, or did you entertain with other genres before? Just curious on your origin story.
Well, I didn't really have any intention, excuse me, of writing. So at the end of high school, my grades were such that college was probably not a legitimate option. And one of my friend's mothers actually said, "You should be a journalist." And it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. So I joined the Air Force as a public affairs specialist. And at tech school, they said, "Welcome to the basic journalism school." And it's like, oh, that's odd. And so that's how I kind of started writing, right? I mean, just going out and, what do you do? And news stories and sports stories and all that kind of thing. Every base had a weekly newspaper, and that's what I did for like a dozen years. So by the time I got out, everybody has a book in their head, right? At some point, you just think of something, and it stays with you. And I had some GI Bill money left. And I said, I'll go get a master's in English creative writing. And part of that was to get, 40, 50,000 words of a story down. And so that became Magic's Genesis to Grey. And it was meant to be a single book. And in the process of writing that book, it's like, hey, this is kind of fun. And there was like a single line in that story about this sword that was, if you picture a katana with another katana spine to spine, right? So the blades are both on the outside, and you get this kind of willow leaf almost kind of in the middle space. I just had a throwaway line about that sword, and I just kept thinking about it, and that became book 2. And then, the series just kind of continued on for 6 books.
So you mentioned a story just lives in your head for a little while. So I'm curious, before we continue about your history, how long was Sigil of Enderune stuck in your head before you put ink to paper?
Not at all. Mike and I were on Bald and Balding, and Michael Roberti was on, and he had mentioned, he was telling us about this story he was writing or had written about these folks who had tattoos, and their magic was in their tattoos or something, and when they died, the magic left. And just something about that, I just sat there and I scribbled something down, and that's how the whole thing started. It started with the idea that magic has to be written down, not as a tattoo, but as, everybody's used to like spell scrolls and all that kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, what if magic had to be done that way? There was no other way to do it. And so then I started kind of delving into, different color inks do different things. And then my Google searches became a lot of how do you make ink, and, what kind of inks could people actually make in the 13 or 1400s? What colors were available? And I realized that you could actually make most colors from just natural things. So I started writing the story all based around that. And then I realized that's just way too in the weeds. We don't need this much of how things work. So I, threw away 20,000 words or so. Just started focusing a little bit more on the story as opposed to the mechanics of how the world worked. And it turned out much better for that. But yeah, that's how that came about. So it wasn't anything that had been hanging around my head for a long time at all.
Well, that's really cool. That's really cool. It's crazy where just ideas come from, just out of nowhere. It's like talking to someone else and going, huh? And then it starts leading down the path. So Mike said that's 100% a true story. He was there. So that's good. I'm glad there was
Yeah, I mean, if you find the Michael Roberti episode and watch it, you'll see me going, hold on a minute. And, yeah.
That's so funny.
So, I mean, it was kind of nice, though, because the previous 9 books I had done were all in the same world. So I just needed to kind of take a break from that because, you just kind of get a little stir crazy. And so this kind of just said, I'll do this, and it wasn't one of those things that was fully formed. I didn't know where it was going to end up. All the way through it, it was always a kind of a, okay, what's going to happen here. One of the characters, Sinjin, in the original kind of pass through, was never supposed to make it past about chapter 2. He was supposed to be a means to getting to Finn, the main character. But I kind of liked his character and said, you know what, we'll just leave him here as kind of a, the Yoda character or whatever it is. And it worked out pretty well. And that was a fun character to write as well. But yeah, there was the whole way through writing it, I was never really sure until quite close to the end what was going to happen, how it was going to turn out, which was also different because usually I know how a book is going to end, even if I don't know what's all in the middle of it. Oh.
Interesting. So what made you do it differently with this one?
Again, I think it was just wanting to do something really different, I mean, it's still a fantasy book, right? But it's very different than the other series. The other series was Magic's Genesis came about from me thinking, all of these fantasy stories we read, they all have, it seems, magic is a baked in portion of the world when you open the book. And I've always kind of wondered, well, somebody had to have been the first person to use magic, right? So what did that look like? So that was the Magic's Genesis. That was the idea behind that. It's like, let's take a look at a world without magic that all of a sudden gets magic, and then how that world changes over a period of time as magic kind of starts to become more ingrained, and it becomes to look a little bit more like the typical fantasy world we're used to. This was different because, the magic had always been there, but it was just a little bit different style. Yeah.
So why did you choose fantasy to be your go-to? Was it like were you just a big fan of reading fantasy, watching fantasy?
Yeah. That's what I've always read. I mean, growing up, I went through a period for about 10 years. I'd read The Hobbit once a year at least, The Lord of the Rings and all that. Fred Saberhagen, who's the guy that wrote Drizzt Do'Urden? Salvatore, I guess, R.A. Salvatore, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just what I read most of. I'd read the odd science fiction, but not a lot. In my house, growing up, we had a lot of books, but there were a lot of Westerns and things, which my dad really liked and my sister really liked, but I never opened a Western. That just didn't appeal to me for some reason. But yeah, the Magic Dragons kind of stuff, that really did. And as when I got into my early teens, listening to music, I was really kind of taken in by progressive rock, which of course has a lot of kind of Tolkien-esque influences through it anyway. So that was just it. I mean, I have an idea for a thriller book that, driving through Europe in '89, buddy of mine, we were in I want to say Frankfurt, Germany, and we're sitting out on the steps of this cathedral, and I just had this idea for a story, and it's still in the back of my head, but I haven't written it down yet. So it's, there's a possibility there's a thriller in my future, but I don't know.
Awesome. That's interesting. I've read The Hobbit. I'm very familiar with R.A. Salvatore. I've seen his books all over the place. I've never actually picked up one of his stories and gone through and actually read it.
Oh, but really
I hear they're fantastic.
Yeah. Garth Nix, I'm always trying to peddle Garth Nix. He did a 7-book series called Keys to the Kingdom, which is so clever, and just how he takes kind of ideas and tosses them on its head. It's very reminiscent of the Discworld guy, whose name eludes me.
Terry Pratchett.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. It's very kind of reminiscent of that, and how clever he is with all the things he does. But Garth Nix is that's a series definitely worth picking up, and they're fairly short. They're quick reads, but they're really good.
Cool. I have that down. I'll go through and check those out after our conversation. Keys to the Kingdom. Perfect. So I'm curious, before we get into your creative process, from a relaxation, maybe hobbies perspective, when you're not reading, writing, editing, what do you do for fun?
Yeah.
What's something how you do to go through and relax?
Whatever Mrs. Bushey needs me to do around the house. Um, yeah, the last few weekends I've been home, I've been building a fence. But yeah, earlier this year I bought a wood lathe because, you know, it's one of those things where retirement is not too terribly far on the horizon, and I have to find some hobbies, otherwise, you know, I will be underfoot all the time. So that's a good time. And also I thought, you know, it'd be good to have a hobby where I actually have to pay really close attention. So power tools kind of fit that bill. You know, you have to focus on what you're doing. You really can't let your mind wander too much.
Mhm. Well, you
So
could if you want to.
you
If,
could do it
if you want to
once,
keep all your fingers, I guess you
right?
need to pay attention.
So this was a nice hobby, and it, you know, it's fun. You can make stuff. And
Fun. I like it. That's something I would like to get better at. I'm decent enough with like woodworking and doing stuff like that. Decent enough, not enough to sell anything or even show off to anybody, but enough where I'm like, hey, look, I built that wobbly table over there.
right. Yeah, there's something nice about being able to do that. And you know, at the end of an hour or two or whatever it is, depending on what you're making, you have something that you put together. I mean, it's kind of like a book, but it's much faster, right, than a book. And you don't, I mean, you in kind of the same way, you might go back to it in a few weeks and look at it and go, oh yeah, I kind of messed that up a little bit, and this a little bit, you know, but a lot of other people won't notice it, whereas they will notice if you spelt the character's name two different ways. It's
Yeah, it's the same as one, one leg being longer than another one on a chair. It's pretty noticeable. I hear you. I hear you.
it's
So
easier to change that though.
yeah,
Fix that
yeah, a
with
little bit.
paper.
Yeah. So you have a lot of ideas. Really, I feel like everyone has story ideas that they have within their head. But for you, when do you go through and go, hey, this is an idea, but it's actually worth writing down, or it's just a dumb idea that I'm going to keep in the back of my head? How do you go through and make that decision?
Generally, I just kind of start writing. If it's something I'm really serious about, I'll just start writing it. So the other day I was laying in bed and I could not sleep and I could not sleep. And I had an idea for a story I've been thinking about for a while. And some things just started kind of clicking into place. So it's like, okay, I have two options now. I can like fully wake up and go write this down, or I can just stay awake here in this kind of half sleep and keep thinking about it enough so that I will remember it when I'm awake, and then I will record it. And that's what I ended up doing. I had spent another 2 hours just thinking about it, you know. It's like, okay, I think it's in my head well enough now where I'll be okay in the morning. And I got up in the morning and took out a recorder and just, you know, and that's what I do. It's like you take walks or whatever, you got a little recorder app on your phone, you know, and you just kind of hit record and spout your ideas and then go back to them at some point and look at them and say, okay, yeah, this is good, that's good, you know,
That's
or not.
that's so funny. Um, I do that occasionally when I have a ridiculous idea and I use the notes app and I talk to it on my phone, forget about it for weeks at a time. And then I go back and listen to it. I'm like, what did I say? And you listen to it, I'm like, what was I rambling about? Like, none of this makes any sense. And it's like, you can hear the excitement in my voice as I'm telling whatever nonsense I'm talking on it. And I'm like,
Right.
delete. This is stupid. Like, I'm so dumb. And then I delete it and then go off my day.
Oh no, you don't delete it, because every now and then you go back to it and it's like there's like one little thing in there that'll be useful, you know. Um, and it's like, oh, okay, I'll you know, I'll pull that out of it, you know, whatever it is. Listening
I'll,
to music, sometimes you hear songs. Um, there's a, I don't know if you're familiar with the band Squeeze.
mm-mm.
There's a line in one of their songs that said, I drunk myself back sober. And it's like, that's awesome, right? It's like, I need to use that in a story somewhere that, a guy was so drunk he drank himself back sober. So, yeah.
So when you're writing, you have an idea, you just start writing it down, and it's like, okay, I'm actually hitting this, or you're staying up in the middle of the night and you're going through and thinking of an idea. How do you then decide, is this going to be a standalone story, or is this going to be a series? Is it just a story telling itself, or is it, hey, like I'm feeling it in like multiple parts to get to this big end plan? Like, how do you go through and make that decision? I find that very interesting for how authors decide this.
The first book, The Gray, again, when I started writing it, it was one book, right? It was, I want to do this book and hurrah, I will have written a book. And then I just started it's 6 books now, but what it really is 2 trilogies, because the first antagonist has his complete arc at the end of book 3, and a second antagonist picks up for books 4, 5, and 6. So if I was going to redo it, which I will sometime in the future, I will make that into 2 trilogies as opposed to a 6-book series. But I think it's hard to say, right? Because the other series I'm working on, Ranger's Deck, I actually took out like a bunch of little note cards, and and this is as much as I will ever or have ever done as far as plotting. So a little index cards, 3x5 index cards, and I just scribbled a couple sentences on each one and said, okay, that's book 1, this is book 2, this is book 3, right? And I had like 11 books laid out. So when you read book 1 of Ranger's Deck, the guy gets 11 cards. 10 of them are blank, 1 of them has the picture that's on the front. About midway through toward the end of book 2, I guess, starting book 3, I guess as I was writing book 3, I realized I could do this in 11 books, but I could also do it in 5. So there's no point in dragging this out for 11 books, right? I will do what I want to do in 5. Well, that leaves 6 cards left over. Okay, well, down the road, I have an idea for another series in the same world, but it will be generations in the future. So I'll just save them for that. So in that respect, I guess, I know that it's going to be a series. Sigil, I very purposefully made it as a single book. There will be another book in that world with those characters, but it will just be another story, right? It's just another story of Enderune. So there might be several. I don't know how many there will ever be in that. If I feel like making more, I'll make more. But they're not all tied to a particular storyline. They'll all be kind of individual stories. So you could pick up any one of them and go, okay.
And then for those who enjoy and have read all of them before, there's going to be obviously some Easter eggs, some cool things for them. But I really like that. I like that. I think that's what Terry Pratchett did, or I imagine he did. I've only read a few of his books, but they're all like based in the same type of world environment, I guess.
The giant turtle on 4 elephants or whatever it is.
Yeah, something like that. Awesome. That's cool.
That guy must have been high. He had to have been.
It was a different time back then. It was a different time.
There are just some ideas you read, and I sit there and go, I could be alone for 100 years with a mountain of paper, and I would never, ever, ever think of that, So, I don't know.
Oh man, trouble. Oh, I didn't realize Mark came in. How's it going, buddy? Didn't see you jumping in, and then we have Trouble just walked in.
Sir
Neil Montague. Appreciate being here, buddy. So I'm ready to jump into the non-spoiler of Sigil of Enderune. When I went through and read this story, I felt the Enderune felt very rich with myth and geography. I really love the world that you built with this.
Oh, thank you.
And we discussed the magic system, how you came up with that idea, but I'm really curious from the world perspective, what inspired the design of this world?
You mean like the physical layout?
The physical layout, yeah.
So I need maps generally. And because every time I try to give somebody money to give me a map, it turns out like crap. I went and I got this program, Mega Sploot or something like that. I forget what the program is actually called. So I spent, a week learning how to make maps. And so that's what I did, is I just made a map. And then as you're making it, then I kind of looked and said, oh, well, this is kind of cool because these little mountain features here, if you really squint your eyes enough, people there could say, okay, this is like a dragon bones or something, right? It's like, because you've got that big spine down the middle, and then you have these two little spines off to the side. Yeah, so you start with the map, and that kind of gives you a direction, it's like, okay, we're going to put the people here. So now when they need to go somewhere, they're going north, south, east, west, whatever it is, and you know where the water is and all that kind of thing. As far as the little barrier islands around it, it's just, doodling on the program. And you kind of go, well, that's cool. It's kind of the same way you make up names, right? Sometimes I can't think of a name. I'll just sit there and mash the keyboard with both hands and then look inside whatever nonsense I just typed for like 4 or 5 letters that kind of maybe look like something, and then pull that out and play with it until you can pronounce it. So
that's so funny.
There's really not a lot of thought. I mean, it's funny listening to the things that you said, which are all very lovely, by the way, and thinking about like high school English class, where the teacher always like, well, what did the author mean? It's like the author wanted to get paid, right? I mean, he wanted to eat. That's all they really wanted. He didn't necessarily mean anything. And so I've mentioned this before, the Robert Frost poem, the In the Woods,
Mm-hmm.
Two paths diverge in the woods, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
He ended it with the same line twice. And I forget the line. But he used the same line twice at the end, and they're always like going on, like, oh my God, why did he do that? And somebody asked him before he died, why did you do that? He said, I couldn't think of anything else. So I just used it again. It's like, okay. Sometimes it's as simple as that. So generally, I'm not trying to make a big statement or anything with any of this kind of thing. I'm glad people can see those type of things in it because, it makes me look smarter than I am. And that's a pretty low bar, to be fair. But yeah, generally I think with the first 3 books of my first series, I did actually make the bad guy Winter. I did actually try to give him some, so I have a master's in strategic communication and leadership, and the leadership study portion of that is super interesting. And so I tried to give him traits that would very clearly identify him as a good leader. But of course, he used them all for evil, right? I mean, his end game for all of his great leadership traits was horrible. And that was very easily seen as well. But I mean, on the surface, you would look at him and go, oh, I want to work for that guy. Yeah, until he starts killing people and stuff. And then you go, oh, yeah, maybe not. But yet usually I don't try to have, well, I'm going to contradict myself again. I think if you looked at it, you could also, if you look at all of the books I've written, you could probably pretty easily tell my opinion on organized religion as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that would be a stretch for someone to ferret that out of there. So.
See, so you do put a little bit more extra thought into it. It's not just mashing a keyboard and hoping you can find a name within it. So there's a reasoning behind it. even if it's unconscious or not, if it's not like or if it's not forefront in your decision making.
Well, I mean, it's not the point of the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to have when I was writing Enderune, when it came into the thought of when they meet the cleric at the temple, I actually sat there and said, "Oh, you're not going to get into a church thing again. It's like you don't need to do this again." But then it's like, well, that's kind of where it's going. We can stay away from it a little bit, but it's because they would have those in all these different places. It was a convenient conduit to move the plot along. So, and I think clerics generally make good bad guys.
I agree. A lot of the good stories I have, clerics are usually the best antagonist in the story. Though every time I get a good one.
Mike.
What did Mike say? Rose, real process.
I don't have maple syrup here, Mike, but what I do have is I have Twizzlers in a bowl of whipped cream. And if you've never taken a Twizzler, just dipped it in whipped cream, it's freaking delicious. You should give it a try, like a thing of Cool Whip.
I've never done that before. That's quite hilarious.
I shouldn't do it now. I'm really.
Oh my goodness.
Get this diabetes med someday.
That sounds entirely gross.
Oh no, Tim, you don't. No, just try it, man.
Listen, I will try it to at least then tell you, yes, I tried it. It was gross. Or, wow, it's amazing.
So when growing up, we ate peanut butter and fluff sandwiches a lot. I'm the youngest of 7, right? 6 boys. So, and you would take your peanut butter and fluff sandwich and you rip it in half and you dunk it in chocolate milk. And people always think that sounds disgusting until they try it. Then they say, they do say it's delicious, but it's still disgusting. But it is delicious, so give that a try too.
It's delicious, but it's still disgusting. That's so funny. That's so funny. So for those that are just getting on now, Ro mentioned that this is kind of a chosen one type of story. So it has a prophecy at the beginning of the story. And I feel like it's a big theme or a tone without the story. You really set it at the very beginning. How did you go through an approach writing a prophecy that felt mysterious but not confusing? Because I've read so many books where they try to do the prophecy and it just didn't make any sense, but I felt yours made sense what was going on. Do you mind going into how you came up with that kind of?
One thing I did different. So in Magic Genesis the Gray, there's also a prophecy. And I wrote that knowing that the book was going to have nothing to do with it. It's like out there. So if a reader might think, oh, a prophecy, that never pays off. It just doesn't. It's a dead end, totally. Yes, I'm in my apartment, El. Nothing around me at all. So this time I said, okay, if I want to have a prophecy, I want to have it actually mean something. And you've read the book, you can tell me whether it does or not. But when I originally wrote it, I looked for I thought about doing it in iambic pentameter just for S's and G's. And then I kind of looked up iambic pentameter and said, no, I'm not going to do that. So I looked up other odd kind of poetry structures. And I don't know that the end one actually turned out that way, but I did originally in one of those kind of odd ways where it's like A, B, C, B, kind of where the in every quatrain, I guess, the first quatrain, the first and third lines rhymed, and the second one, the second and fourth ones rhymed, and then back to first and third, like that. So yeah, I actually did it with some purpose and try to say, right, we're going to try to make this make sense. Thinking as I was doing it that the person who was writing it, wasn't gifted, when they did it. So, but I think those things are kind of neat sometimes. Um, but the questions you would have about it, I think I did kind of address in the story a little bit.
Mhm.
So it's not just, some Harry Potter kind of, you shall choose the method of your destruction kind of thing.
It's so funny. Like cracking me up. Right? He like Mike, you're so funny.
I don't have an MFA though, Mike, so I can struggle.
Oh my goodness. Community in your story plays a important role, whether it's through the families, the villagers, the network within the story. How important was it for you to ground your characters in like reality of everyday life? Because a lot of times you don't really get that in these types of fantasy stories. They kind of just like, hey, they're on their adventure, let them just go do their thing.
Have you ever seen, and I promise I'll answer the question. Have you ever seen The Holy Grail, Monty Python, The Holy Grail?
Mhm. Yep.
That won awards for realism when it came out because it wasn't like everybody all shining and nice wearing the same stuff. There's people covered in shit and mud and, just,
Hmm.
well, right? And I think sometimes that fantasy stories are so kind of cleansed of all that, but the people, every story, regardless of what your plot is or what action is going to happen, it's driven by people. And if you can't make your people relatable or realistic, it doesn't matter how good your plot device is or anything else. Um, I mean, and you go to Star Wars or Harry Potter or The Hobbit, right? You genuinely liked Bilbo Baggins. You like Gandalf. You want to see what's going to happen. The rest of it, if that all works out, great. If you know the Shire and at the end of Lord of the Rings, even though you haven't read it, spoiler, but I think we're past our time for that. Um, they sack Hobbiton, right?
Hmm.
Saruman comes back with Wormtongue, and they pretty much sack Hobbiton, and you feel really bad for him, right? Because Hobbiton's supposed to be this lovely little green kind of place nestled in the hills, and now it's been ruined. Um, I, I don't want to get stuck too much on the, this makes sense and this is quote unquote realistic, because at the end of the day, you have magic and dragons, so it's not going to be realistic. Um, but I think the connections between the people are important to make the whole thing kind of work, because you've got to have that something for the reader to want to hold on to, right? And even if you make just a horrible, vile person, you want to give them something that's likable enough where people don't, they just don't care what happens. I mean, they want to see them meet their end or whatever. Game of Thrones, Joffrey, right? That little
Hmm.
bitch, right?
Hmm.
I didn't watch a lot of Game of Thrones, but I really despised and loathed his character. So when he did die, I was happy. I was just so happy when he died. Um, but that's what I was supposed to feel, right? Because I mean, that's how he was written. He was a genuinely unlikable person. So you've given the reader or the viewer something to kind of latch on to, whether it's their distaste for the person or how much they like them. You, despite the fact that Lannister was not a nice guy, and his sister wasn't nice, they kind of had some redeeming qualities to them.
Hmm.
So
Lucas, I agree. I was thinking the same thing.
well, yeah,
Oh my
if you
goodness.
can't be nice.
Oh, it's so funny. Oh man. All right. I've been not paying attention too much to the chat. I'm so sorry. I
Gotcha.
see a few other people that jumped in here. We have Emerald Dragon Lady. How's it going? Appreciate being here, Maddie.
Hey, Maddie.
And then we have Lucas, which I popped Lucas up already, but I will again. How's it going, Lucas? Still funny. And then the great Milo Macabre. How's it going? Long time no see, friend. Hope you're doing well. Oh my goodness, so funny. So funny. Cracks me up. So the magic system. I kind of want to go back to that because I've really enjoyed the magic system. I've not seen anything like this before where you have to go through and actually write things out. I just find it very interesting. It has to do with the ink. I find it very cool. What was the most challenging part in making the magic system unique, but also feel functional? Like, hey, this actually could work in the type of world you're putting together.
I think with any magic system, you have to make it strong enough to do what you want to do, but have some inherent weaknesses so it's not just totally OP, right? Because I mean, magic, it's like, oh well, you're done, right? And I always wondered about that with Gandalf. It's like, why are you riding around with a sword, man? It's like, why aren't you blasting the hell out of people? And then when he does do it, it's like, why don't you do that more than once, right? Come on. And that's never really explained well enough for me. But so with this, I said, okay, again, I when I started doing it, I had like 3 different categories. I had beneficial inks, detrimental inks, and neutral inks. Beneficial inks were like green, brown, it was like 5 colors. And they were for healing and helping crops grow and things like that. And your detrimental inks were your reds and orange and whatever they were. And then your neutrals were black and white, and white being the most powerful because it's the most difficult to make, and you can cut all the other ones with it to make them more or less of the color they are. And so I was getting all wrapped around the axle about that. And then I said, you know what? Just ease up all that. I said, we'll mention it in there, but we don't need to go into great lengths about it. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, why wouldn't, black ink work for everything? Well, it will, right? But it will be more powerful when put to a specific use. So that was kind of a limitation, right? So the main bad guys in Enderune are trained very specifically in red ink magic alone, and its most potent form is destructive. And I said, okay, well, it needs to have other limitations to it. So the other limitations I put is the amount of ink that you can put down, right? So the longer unbroken line of ink that you can write, the stronger the spell will be. Mm-hmm. And also the thicker it is. So if you just want to start a campfire, a very short kind of thick little fire spell will do the job. If you want, a raging fireball, you want to have a very thick, very long line of ink. So the wizards have to get where they can, write in a circle, basically. Take a piece of paper and spin it while they're writing, so the ink stays on the paper and keep going. But an pen only holds so much ink, right? So there's all those kind of little limitations that are in it. And as part of my research, I went out and bought a fountain pen, which I'd never used before, and I wrote about 30,000 words of this story on a notepad, just like this. And my penmanship did not improve at all, which was rather unfortunate. But so it was kind of a fun exercise, and I think I have like 4 or 5 fountain pens lying around now, and because they're awesome, I love them. And you can get different color inks for fountain pens, which is cool. So it was an excuse to go buy some more stuff.
So I feel like I know what the answer is going to be, but I have to ask the question. Anyway.
Sure.
Okay. So, so a little backstory before I ask this question. I like looking at stories and finding metaphors, even if they're not there. So the example that you gave, like, why did he add twice? What does that mean? I'm that person. I'm like, ooh, is there something here? And it's like, no, I just added it just because I thought, I had nothing else to say. And that's what I feel like you're going to tell me right now. But just in case this is one of those magic moments, I feel like the written magic in your story is a metaphor for storytelling. Was that something you thought about doing? Is that true, or am I just
No, but I might use that. Sounds great.
it's like I was going through thinking about like you from my perspective, you were going through and the magic system was based off of if you don't tell your story, you can't change anything. Because the world is changed really by writing and what people say and the stories people go through and tell. And if you don't write anything, you cannot go through and make any kind of changes. And I don't know, I felt like there was a metaphor there, but maybe I'm leaning into something that's not there.
I might answer that differently from now on. I really like that. No, I mean not consciously. I certainly wasn't doing that, but yeah, gold star for you.
Yes. So yes, you did go through and think that it was there.
I would love to sit here and tell you, yeah, that's absolutely what I was thinking, but that would just be giving me way too much credit.
I hear you.
No, but I mean, yeah, that is a really good kind of insight into that because yeah, no matter what you want to do, you have to be able to put those ideas down somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Put that ink to paper to go through and actually make things happen. Because you can't make magic of anything unless you put in ink to paper and make it work.
I think more it goes to the pen is mightier than the sword, unless you're one-on-one, kind of thing, in that anytime we've gotten anywhere as a society, whether fictional or real, it's because someone has bothered to, do the learning, right? And write it down so the next people didn't have to discover it themselves. They could read it and then build on that and keep going. So yeah.
All right.
I like that.
I like it. There we go. That's it. That's getting added in there. All right. We are at the point now, Ro, what I like to call the lightning round, where we're going to go through and I'm going to ask you, I think there's like 8, 9 questions on here for you. No thinking. First thing that comes to your mind,
I got that.
Run through it. Yeah, no thinking at all. All right, so we'll jump in. So, are you a morning writer or a night writer?
Night.
Favorite fantasy book you read growing up?
Oh, The Hobbit, easily. That is just, it's still now, actually.
What's harder, writing dialogue or writing action?
Action. Dialogue, I mean, it's just people talking, right? You just kind of like, well, what would you say in this here? Or, what would you want them to say back to you? Or what, if they're a smartass, what would they say back to you? But the action stuff is, my action scenes don't cover pages and pages and pages. Also, because I guess it's one of those things that if, you get stabbed with a sword, I always hate that in movies and stuff. These dudes get punched in the face like 12 times. It's like, I've never been punched in the face, but I'm pretty sure that if I was, I wouldn't just keep being able to take it over and over and over again like that. So,
well, you either got to be smart or tough. That's what I was always told. When you're reading, do you prefer physical books, ebooks, or audiobooks?
I don't read nearly as much as I should. Physical books.
If you could visit any place in Enderune for real, like go into your book for 24 hours, where would you go first?
I'd probably try to go to the place they didn't go in this book, that they'll go in the next book. And that's the island of Jix, where all the dragons are.
If this book, Sigil of Enderune, I asked this on every single one, so this one's not shouldn't be new for anyone that's been on in the chat. if Sigil of Enderune had a theme song, what would it be?
Just because I like it, I'm going to say La Villa Strangiato.
Say what?
La Villa Strangiato. It's an instrumental piece by Rush.
All right.
And it reminds me of, I call it a 1970s version of Vivaldi's Four Seasons, because it just it takes you through a story just with no words. It's the changes and pace changes and all that kind of thing. Give it a listen. It's good too.
Yeah, I added it down. I got to go through and check it out.
Yeah, you need about 12 minutes.
I always have 12 minutes. We'll be fine. Well, we'll do that at the very end. We'll just play the song at the very end.
Okay.
So I appreciate it. That was my lightning round. I always like to end it with the theme song, and that's always the best one, because I always get people to go through and be like, "Oh my goodness, I have no idea." And it's like I always get something. I've never gotten the same song twice by any author, which I love. I love it. So I might make a Spotify track of all the
there you go
authors I interviewed and be like, "Here's everybody's songs."
I don't understand how people write while listening to music, especially the ones that listen to like death metal and shit like that. I mean, I can't have anything like that going on while I'm writing. I just need to. The only noise I can have really is the keyboard. Different strokes, I guess.
Yeah, it's completely different what people go through. Trinity says Minecraft music. That's what she does. It's all calming. That's funny.
Mike said they're evil. That's how they do. Oh, that's people listen to music. Yeah, I don't get
it. Rose definitely not ADHD. Oh my goodness! All right,
the jury's out.
It's you caught me. If you could see, have you gone through and thought if your books could be adapted? So I recently did a video of indie books that are ready for adaptation. Have you gone through and thought about that?
I think everybody's thought about that, right? I mean, the nicest comment I've ever gotten from someone, pre-COVID, we had a writing group at our local library, and this woman there said, "So I woke up this morning and I was trying to remember this movie I was watching last night, and she said I couldn't remember it, and then it's like, oh, it wasn't a movie, it was your book." It's like, well, thank you very much. That's really nice. I think everybody thinks that their book would be make a good adaptation, and that's kind of how I see it when I'm writing it. I kind of see it play out as a film, which helps me kind of move people around and all that kind of thing without doing anything too janky. But yeah, that'd be awesome.
So for Sigil, would you want it to be a movie, or would you, if you had all the money and you had all the rights and you could do whatever you want with it, would you want it to be a film, or would you want it to be more of a TV series? What do you think would be best for this story?
I think with a lot of fantasy stuff, because there's so much going on, that like a Netflix or Apple series is much better suited, because instead of 90 minutes to tell a story, you've got 8 to 12 hours. That would be preferable to me. But I tell you what, if you know anybody and they want to buy the rights, they can do whatever they want. That's fine by me. Go crazy.
Listen, we are, 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon away from anybody. So,
well, that's what they say.
They haven't proved me wrong yet.
I'm the full 6 degrees though. I'm nowhere near 1 or 2. So
we never know. We don't know who people might be connected with on here. So we'll get it going. We'll get the ball rolling.
Well, Mike and I aren't even at 500 subscribers yet. So I don't know if they're connected with anybody. They're holding on to them pretty tight. So I really wanted Mike to have to get that tattoo on his head. It's a damn shame.
Luke says, I just want my story to be poorly adapted and canceled after 1 season like all the others. Oh my goodness.
You know what? Even that Squad goals, right? It'd be all right. It wouldn't be ideal, but you'd have people out there who really liked it, just just like this, like, oh, we want more Firefly. It's like, oh God. Uh,
Oh my goodness, that is so funny. It's so funny. So you mentioned thrillers as another genre you might be interested in going into. Is it just
oh
thrillers, or are you thinking about other ones as well?
no, it's just one particular story. The other thing I really want to do is a cozy mystery, and I played around with that quite a bit before writing Sigil. Um, I was going to do that as my break book from Ranger's deck. I was going to do a cozy mystery, but then the idea for Sigil came along, and it was just seemed like would work a lot faster. So yeah, I was writing a lot of notes and stuff because with the cozy mystery, you guess like, okay, well, where am I going to have it, right? Because you got to have like that place, that sense of place that it can be. Then you got to build up all the characters in that town or whatever it is. Um, so I'm still thinking about it. I'm kind of glad I didn't do it right away because I already know that I was going to go off onto a road that was far too deep. My idea was having a kind of a paranormal cozy. So it was going to be a guy who like inherited his grandmother's house in this little town in Vermont, and there was a ghost that lived in the house that he could see, and the ghost would help him solve whatever mystery that it was. So it would be like another person, but not really another person. Um, and the whole through line of whatever series it would become uh, very heavily involved that ghost. So it'd be a paranormal cozy.
Huh. That's a subgenre I've never heard of, but it makes sense. I like it. Would the ghost be stuck in the house, or could the ghost explore the town with him? Not trying to get too much into the weeds. I'm just
No,
curious.
that's fine. I toyed with both ideas of that, and I think that they would be limited to like the town limits
Hmm.
because they can't just be in the house, right? That's
Yeah.
that's a little too limiting, perhaps. But yeah, but it's kind of fun to say, well, you're going to need the kind of Karen character in the town. You're going to have that person. You're going to have some people who are friendly with them. You're going to have the love interest kind of thing, because you're going to have that tension somehow. Um, we watch a lot of British cozy mysteries at our house. These little towns of 50 people in deepest England where people are dying by the bushel full. It's like, well, who the hell would live there? Good God, there's always like some nun or priest or something helping the constable solve the mystery. It's all kind of weird, but yes, the ghost peanut butter and fluff sandwich. You betcha.
That's all right. There we go. We got a name. So funny, Mike. You kill me. Literally, you crack me up, man. Um, oh my goodness. So, Ro, what um, what are your goals as a writer, a creator, or just a human in this wild world? What's some goals of yours?
Um, as a writer, the nice thing is not having to pay rent or anything with writing, that I don't necessarily need goals, right? I mean, you always sit there and say, well, it would be nice to be able to sell 10,000 books a year or whatever. And yeah, that would be nice. But then you look at it and go, okay, what do I realistically need to do to make that happen? Do I have the time to do that? And do I have the willingness to spend that time to do that? No. So I think just, if I can write books that I enjoy and that other people enjoy, even if it's only a few people, great. I've left something for my kids and maybe grandkids one day that, that they can have, that will keep me around this mortal coil longer than my body will be. And I think that's kind of cool. Uh, Otherwise, live to be 95, I guess, you know,
I like it.
something like that.
I feel like that's a good goal. That's a good goal. Live
Yeah.
to 95 and have a story that can go down generations and can kind of still hear your voice.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I thought about doing an audiobook by myself for that very reason, right? Just so that, they would be able to hear it in my voice, but then I listen to myself. It's like, yeah, nobody wants that. So that's all right.
I think you should. I think you should have a bald and balding production of your book, and you can do yours and Mike's books, and it's just you two doing the stories.
I don't know if that would happen.
Well,
be interesting.
I'm putting it out in the universe, and we'll, hopefully that's lingers in the back of your mind, and then it's like, hey, let's make it happen.
We might try it one day. I mean, right now, the way things are, I'm like, no. Working up here in DC and, living actually 250 miles away. It's a lot of things have kind of been put on hold, right? It's like not doing as many Comic Cons and things like that because you have a weekend off, you like to kind of go home and spend it with the family. I should be doing more writing, just sitting here, right? But yeah.
We're getting a lot of love on here. The only person who doesn't like it is Mike. Just throwing it out there. Everyone else thinks it sounds awesome. I agree. I think that'll be great narration. We have people volunteering to be ARC listeners.
All right.
Maybe start with short stories.
I have an idea for that one I was laying up in bed the other week with, which I was originally thinking of as a novel, but I think I'm going to do it as a novella now. So maybe I will do that. That would be kind of a sci-fi fantasy. So maybe it's something I can enter into Spiffbo or Spickbo or whatever the hell it
is. So giving yourself another opportunity to sell Sigil of Enderune, what kind of readers do you think will resonate most with this story?
Well, I hope anybody who just likes, a good fantasy story. So it's not overly ponderous, right? I mean, it's just shy of 100,000 words. Mm-hmm. So it's not one of those torturous kind of descriptive things. I try to have something going in the whole time. There's enough characters. Somebody mentioned head hopping, and it is kind of a head hopping story, but it's a little different. There's a word for it, which I entirely forget. So you start with the few people and then they split up, right? So for a few chapters, you follow one guy going from, timestamp A to timestamp B. And then you go to the second person, follow them on their little thing from timestamp A to timestamp B, and then the third person, right? Until eventually they all kind of come back together. So while it's head hopping, it's not within chapters or anything. There are several chapters at a time where it's just one person. But you do that a couple of times. Yeah, I forgot the question. I knew that was going to happen.
Who would resonate with your story?
I think anybody that just wants a light but meaningful fantasy story where bad things happen to good people, and then good people find their way out of it and meet some other interesting people, and it leaves a few strands lying around that may or may not be picked up at other times. I mean, writing it, well, I think one of my favorite bits of it was the whole idea of the virtuous trade. Mm-hmm. And I did that just because it starts with the letters VT. So I'm from Blacksburg, where Virginia Tech is, and I'm from Vermont. So VT seemed like a reasonable thing to do. And I can't rule out that there's not going to be a story sometime in the future centered around that, because I really like that whole kind of idea, especially as it's now devolved from that one gentleman in the story who was a trader, the costermonger. And you learn cool words like costermonger, which is nice.
Lucas does have a good question. What's the recommended reading grade level for this story? And I will let you go through and answer that because I'm terrible at these types of questions.
Yeah, I don't generally write young adult kind of thing. And so for my first series, I have parents ask me that all the time at Comic Cons. And I've had people tell me their 11-year-olds have read it and been fine with it. So my stock answer is to say, has your kid ever watched Deadpool? Right? If they've watched Deadpool, this will be easy, right? Because I don't write, it's a sword and sorcery book, right? A fool's going to get killed, but it's not graphic violence generally. Yeah, I think probably 12 and up.
Yeah, I agree. Young adult and up, but I wouldn't consider this a YA book kind of thing. I wouldn't consider it there, but I would be fine with a teenager reading this story kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because again, the things that happen, there's no like real gross kind of things, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, not that I don't like writing it. Every now and then I really want to, but it's just kind of unnecessary for the story to go into that all the time. I think sometimes you can do more with less of that. And just, one of my favorite scenes is in Magic's Genesis, where the bad guy gets a bunch of people together and is kind of consolidating his power. And he does some pretty nasty things, but none of them are graphic. It's just kind of how he does it. He's just very methodical and, kind of wink and a nudge, goes up to this woman and say, okay, I understand that you really love this guy, but you're married. So as my present to you, how would you like to become a widow? Right. I will let you choose, and then we'll make that happen for you, but you don't need to see it.
Yeah. That can be even more terrifying because you're letting people be in their own mind and being imaginative of how it's going to actually play out. No, I can't agree. So I know you're busy, but is there any projects you're currently working on now?
I'm waiting for Mike and EL actually to get me something so I can edit those. And then I need to start on book 4 of Ranger's deck, which will be titled The Druid. And I've got some ideas for that. I've actually started writing little bits of that. And that'll be fun because the titular druid in that is going to spend probably at least the first half of the book just in a total drunken stupor. So that'll be, I'll have to go back into my mind a little bit and remember the old days and for writing that. But
awesome.
Yeah,
Sounds
so
fun.
we'll get book 4 of that done. And then when that's done, I'll probably maybe try to do that novella and then finish off the Rangers deck series and then probably get back to Enderune.
Awesome. Love it. All right. Well, Ro, I really do appreciate you jumping on. This has been a hysterical conversation. I've had a blast. Thank you for everyone
having me on.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Anytime, man. And I appreciate everyone in the chat. Y'all are cracking me up. Y'all literally get my thought process out left field, and I love it. But Ro, how can people go through who are watching currently and who's watching the replay? How can they go through and support you and get in contact with you?
Oh, just Venmo me some money. No. I have a link tree. So it's Linktree Bushey, and all my stuff is there. And I don't have a website right now. I just started a Substack page. I'm not sure where all the buttons are on that yet, so that's going to be something I have to figure out. But yeah, I do everything through Amazon just because it's easier for me right now.
Perfect.
Might
I will.
send cash.
I will put your link tree in the description below. So go through and check out Ro's link tree. Connect with him in whatever social area you're in. But definitely go through and check out this story. It's a lot of fun. It's a great, fantastic time. And like Rose said, it can be read as a standalone story, which in the world where every book has to be 90 books, it is awesome to go through and read an actual good story that's a standalone story. So, Ro, again, thank you so much for joining me and giving us all these fantastic stories. And I hope everyone in the chat has a fantastic night and, go through and stay overbooked. I appreciate everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.